So with the knife and a handle like this, it's a lot safer for me to baton and make feather sticks and all that kind of stuff. This is just a dead piece of tulip poplar. Yep. Let me carve some feathers here real quick. Real quick, I'm going to put a little bit of this bird's nest. I got it sitting on top of a piece of the bark from my shelter because it's wet and muddy right here. So I got some of my curls sitting on top, and then once that goes, should have a fire. I'm going to use a match, one of the waterproof matches that I carry in my kit. That's going to be my surest fire. While this fire is burning, I'm going to be throwing the char tin in. I'm saying all this now because the battery's dying on the camera. Alright, so I've got one of my waterproof matches and I've got my strike pad. Alright, so I am on my last legs with this battery. So again, here is my punk wood and tulip poplar bark. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the fire and keep the fire going until the can itself no longer smokes. Now there's no hole poked in this, there's holes where the hinges are, so it's not going to affect nothing. So if the picture's a little crooked right now, I've got my camera just kind of sitting on a tree. My tripod's not by my water source. So my water is been sitting. It is purified now. So this water's okay. It's It's not my favorite. I trap in this creek here, so I know what kind of critters are crawling around in it. The viruses and anything else is going to be killed by those water tablets, but it does nothing for flavor. My plan is to drink a minimum amount of water. If this was fresher water, or if I had maybe later in the day, I'll get some pine needles, make some tea or something with it for flavor. But for right now, I'm not in a life-threatening situation, and I've got plenty of water. So I've got enough to do. I think I got 10 tablets in my tin. So 10 quarts, so 9 more quarts of water, and a good water supply here. I can make it a long time with what I've got. I'm going to sip and savor this delicious water, and just drink enough to maintain myself, but it kind of tastes like it looks. So we got a fresh battery in now. I made char cloth as the battery was dying. You saw the sustainable fire. Behind me here I've got my tin, and there's my char. So I got charred material. I've got a little baby bird's nest here. But for this fire, I'm going to go just with my ferro rod and the back of my knife. I got a small bird's nest. I'm not really concerned with making a sustainable fire. I already did that. Let's go ahead and continue on knocking out my deliverables. Here we go. Alright, so for my last way to make a fire, I'm going to transfer a flame. So what I'm going to do is make an Apache match with this bird's nest material and then my charred punk wood that I got. Now originally I was going to try to do solar. I was going to use the bag with water in it, make a magnifying glass. It's overcast today. I got zero sun. Everything's kind of wet. If I see a good tulip poplar limb or something I can work into a bow drill, I might go for that as a bonus. But transfer of flame is going to get me by. I've still got a lot of work yet to do. I've got to make my traps, I've got to do my carving, I've got to do my first aid. My shelter's not quite there yet, and right now I'm sleeping on mud. So I've got to make a mat to sleep on tonight. So to make an Apache match, I'm kind of basically making this into a mat-like form. So I'm going to get a little bit of both. I'm going to put some of the shredded bark. I'm going to put some of the punk wood in the middle of the bird's nest. And I'm going to give it a real quick hit with the ferro rod. There we go. So if I just continue to blow oxygen onto this, I would just make a fire. So what I'm going to do kind of find a happy medium. I'm going to keep enough oxygen in it so it doesn't go out. And I'm going to limit the oxygen enough where it doesn't just burst into flames. I'm going to use my bank line. And just kind of do a real loose weave with it. This is not really using up this cordage. This is completely recoverable. I'm just putting some wraps around here to hold it together. And just a simple bow knot. And I can just feel the heat in here. So I did come into this with a plan, and using bark was not one of my plans. It just happened to work out. Alright, I'll show you how I'm laying this on the back of the shelter, and I'll show you what kind of shape it's in right now. Alright, so here's a view of the bottom of the shelter. You know, you're not seeing any real daylight through there. The squaw wood, this real small branches, kind of give it a little spring and support the bark. Alright, so once I finish the rest of my deliverables, after that I'm going to focus on the shelter, the rest of the shelter. I'm going to go ahead and make myself a mat to get me up out of the wetness. Or at least insulate myself a little bit. I'm going to get firewood stacked up. Then once I'm covered for that, then I'll start worrying about some of the other priorities. But right now, knocking out my deliverables is number one, shelter is number two. I think I kind of pushed it a little bit, but I kind of forgot. Just a puff. Yeah, I could see the punkwood was going as soon as it got a little air. It looked like it was out, just a little hit, and started glowing. And you can tell the area around the punk wood was like superheated because it was just itching to burn. So transfer a flame, hopefully don't transfer it to the whole woods here, but there's standing water behind me, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. Alright, so I've got a log sitting here, maybe 20 feet from camp, and next thing I'm going to do is work on my carving. So I'm going to take my mora that I put a handle on before, I'm going to make my tri-stick and go ahead and make 3 traps. Now, I mentioned before that I had a little better way figured out to seat this, and what I'm going to do is use a modern version of pine pitch glue, and that's going to be my Gorilla Tape. So I've been experimenting with it, and I was melting it in the holes. It doesn't quite work as well as pine pitch, and I mean, if push comes to shove, I could hike over to the pine trees and make some, but again, this is a speed thing. I've got a lot going on today. This improvised pine pitch is going to give me a hand and make my knife a little more secure. So I'm going to sacrifice one of my matches because I've already proven fire. I'm going to use one of the candles out of my kit, and I'm going to try to drip some of this little scrap piece of duct tape into the hole. Alright, so what I've done here, I don't know if it recorded or not, I took a little bit of Gorilla Tape and I'm melting it down into the slot, making a modern version of pine pitch. This is a quick down and dirty version. Alright, so once that Gorilla Tape dries up, it fills in the gaps, and I've been experimenting with it a little bit. It turns pretty hard. It doesn't work quite as well as pine pitch, but it saves me walking all over Hell's Creation trying to find a pine tree. There is some little stand of pines that way, and if I get everything else done, I might go get some pine needles. But to stop what I'm doing, make a batch of pine pitch, and then haft my little tiny knife, I just as soon use some duct tape. So again, this is a modern version of pine pitch using Gorilla Tape, and it definitely secures the knife in quite a bit more. Alright, so for my tri-stick, I'm about fingertip to elbow. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and carve a point on one end. So this is going to be like a tent stake essentially. Okay, here's a point. On this end, I'm just going to crown it. Okay, so there's a crowned end. That way when you drive this into the ground, it's less likely that the stick's going to split out. Now I'm going to come down about 1 inch and I'm going to make a 7-notch. To do that, I'm going to make a plunge. Okay, so there's the square notch. Pretty useful for building. Next, down about 1 inch from there, I'm going to make a V-notch. That's exactly what I made when I built the saw frame. And slicing and dicing is one thing, but when you start really wrenching into wood, I am getting a little bit of slippage. Pitch, Gorilla Tape pitch or no Gorilla Tape pitch. You got to kind of rely pretty heavy on a thumb grip or a pinch grip. When I was testing it before, I would just half stuff and use it to slice with and that kind of stuff. So that's why it's good to practice this stuff in the real world. Alright, there's the reduction of the stick itself. So if we look at my pine pitch, what's actually happening is it's kind of hardened to the blade, but I've got a lot of walk in the wood itself. This is just a little scrap sapling that I cut down. Perhaps if I had seasoned wood and tried this, it might work a little better. But whatever, it works. It works this good right now. I think the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do one more. I've got a spot down here where there's no knots. I'm going to try to flatten out both sides and make a little hole. Alright, so I've got 2 flats, about 1/3 in on each side. I'm going to clean these up and then I'm going to try to cut a little hole in the middle. Okay, here you go. So each side's reduced by approximately 1/3. Then you cut a hole in the middle. So this is primarily used for like some more advanced building binding techniques. There's a few traps that you have to bore a hole like this. Okay, so tri-stick's good, fire's good. What else did I do? Navigation's good, shelter's good. I have to do my traps, and I have to do my first aid. But my battery light's blinking. It's starting to piss the rain again. I'm going to swap batteries out, and we'll start knocking out the first aid next.